What are you looking forward to about making this move?
Well, I mean, with any new opportunity comes new opportunities and comes, learning a new place and learning a new organization and learning a new community. And so I'm excited about that, and I'm excited to be able to have this additional opportunity to continue to practice as a superintendent. I love this work. This is my life's work, and I concluded that it's still in me, and I still want to do this work, and so I'm excited, and yet it's hard to say goodbye at the same time. So there's a lot of kind of personal stuff that goes on with any move like this.
What do you think about as you look back over your 4 or so years here in Madison?
Well, I'm not a believer in personal legacies, and my belief is that everything we've done has been done by a we, and I hope I've brought constructive leadership to the district, and that we've had what I'll call a forward-thinking agenda through our strategic plan to meet the needs of kids. And so, having said that, I'm pleased in this very difficult time, economic and political time, that we've been able to focus on having an improvement agenda that's been grounded in our strategic plan and grounded in key things like how do we improve our teaching relative to literacy, how do we assess kids in contemporary ways, and just to know that we've been able to keep that conversation going. The advent of a 4-year-old kindergarten program has been key, because the community had a long conversation about it, and thankfully during the time I've been here we've been able to implement that program. Having 1,800 little ones in school, to give them a leg up on a very challenging and high standards curriculum is an important thing, and so I feel very, very good about that. I feel we've been able to use our diversity to create some very positive programming options through dual language immersion programs. That there's been a growth of those programs, and that we have young people who are Spanish-speaking learning English and English-speaking learning Spanish. I think is a very good thing for children and what lies ahead for them.
I know you said you don't want to talk about personal legacy, but do you feel that there's an issue or issues where you may have had your greatest success or a shortcoming?
I mean, I believe I have successes, and I also believe, as any leader, you have your shortcomings as well. And so, my hope is that people would judge me by my ever-present focus on improving the lives of kids, and that's what I've dedicated my life work to. Issues today are challenging, and sometimes you can work through things with success, and sometimes things can't work out. And I've been part of things that can't work out and haven't worked out, and you have personal regret about those kinds of things. You can't do everything today for a lot of different reasons, but I think, on balance, I think we've been able to do a lot of constructive things for children.
Obviously, we talk about the minority achievement gap, and it's dominated the headlines of the past year or so. There's no doubt that minority kids have fallen behind, maybe continue to fall behind as well. Why is that?
Well, first of all, there's no greater social justice issue in our country than this issue. And it wasn't developed overnight, and it won't be eliminated overnight, but it must be eliminated. These gaps in achievement must be eliminated by getting all kids, and now our kids that are furthest behind from meeting standards, to in fact meet and exceed our standards. That has to be about what the work is. There are as many different opinions on the whys as there are people. My view of the why question on achievement gaps is that there are things that happen in schools, the school experience, that allows for some kids not to do as well as they're capable of doing. And those areas, what I call the inside of school factors that affect kids in their learning, are things that are within our control. That represents our commitment to improve education, to engage young people more, to have a more culturally relevant curricular experience for young people so they can see themselves in our schools, and to pay as much attention as we can to engaging kids in the learning process, because when kids feel their place with us, they do that much better. So there are inside of school factors that affect kids, but there are also outside of school factors that affect children. And with increasing poverty in this community and school district, there's no greater disequalizer, especially when you look at how it can affect kids in their early learning. And those kinds of things the school district cannot address alone. We need to address in the context of the community, and the community has a responsibility to take as good a care of children as we possibly can. Here there's some good news. This is a community that is focused on making sure that kids' unmet needs are met. But the reality of it is that all the needs aren't being met, and whether it's mental health needs or physical health needs, we have to pay more attention as a community, given how much we've changed as a community, to those issues, because they affect kids and their learning as well.
Going forward, you won't be here, but how do you think it will happen going forward that we can start to reduce the gap?
I mean, I think there's going to have to be a commitment to those ideas that were approved by the Board of Education. There's going to have to be good implementation around those new program initiatives, and we're going to have a little bit of patience to make sure that they're having the kind of effect that we want them to have. If they're not having that effect, that there's the courage to move in other directions. You know, there's no community that has solved this in its entirety. There are some communities that are making more progress. And my hope for Madison is that this is a community that will be in that category. That's a community, because of its strength and care for children, that will be the place that will be eliminating these gaps. There's no reason it can't happen here.
You mentioned patience. Patience is something that some people did not have with you over the past year on this achievement gap issue. Achievement gap's been around for decades. Do you feel like some of the community have made you the scapegoat on this issue?
I mean, I understand that there's frustration, and as I've said, there's no greater social justice issue than this issue. And I know that there's lack of patience. So while I call for patience in implementing these new plans, I understand the frustration and anger. But I also understand that these gaps were not of Dan Nerad's making in and of them itself. But I have to accept responsibility. I am the superintendent of schools. And so, you know, people need to have a place to go to be upset about, and I don't think that that it's inappropriate for people to be upset about this issue. My wish in going forward, that it's not about who's the superintendent or who's upset. It's about developing a collective direction and people working together. You know, less debate about, you know, what we should do, and more focus on let's get going and let's do some things. Let's get actionable around these things. And so, yeah, I do understand that, and it was a hard conversation, you know, to be in the middle of. But leadership does have responsibility, and I accept that responsibility.
I want to ask about a couple of people who are outside of the school district, but obviously have had their say about what goes on. What do you think about Kaleem Care and what he's doing?
And Kaleem cares as an individual and as an organization. They have a steadfast commitment to eliminating injustice in this community, and perhaps in having a broader effect than just this community. And so I respect that advocacy. I do respect that advocacy. And there are times where he and I have agreed on things, and there are times he and I haven't agreed on things. And my hope is going forward that we can look back and know that, you know, he and I have both stayed in the conversation. Again, I know I'm being redundant, but there's no more important conversation than this conversation. And so I know that there are differences of opinions, that he has his opinions, I have my opinions. But I think my hope is, on balance, we've been able to work together and work through things. I said to him right in the beginning, we need to work together. I've tried to bring that type of message.
And then John Matthews, head of the teachers union, he has told me on our air before that he didn't think you were quite the right fit for Madison because of the amount of public speaking and outspokenness that a superintendent needs to do here. Do you agree with that assessment, and what do you think of John?
Well, I mean, I have come to know John well. I've come to respect John for the work that he does. He and I have difference of opinions about things, and this is an area that he and I have a difference of opinion. You know, I've tried to be an advocate for what I felt is right for children, and I'll let other people, including John, judge you know, my effectiveness with that. But my hope is that most people, that he would recognize that we've had a lot of areas that we've agreed on and some areas that we haven't agreed on, and that we move forward with respect.
The way state aid has been changed over the past couple of years now. How do you view you and the school board and the administration being able to work together to figure out how to make changes?
I mean, I think there's been a real good effort to work together through this difficult financial time. And what my urging is, there obviously has to be that continued working together. But until the state decides to have the right kind of conversation about what do we need to do to educate our children well, and what does that cost? What does it cost when we fail to do so well? And return to more bipartisanship, I fear that we're not going to be able to have as much of an impact community by community. The state is responsible for public education constitutionally. And there are different opinions about the best way to educate children, but we need to return to bipartisanship where people with different views can come in a room and compromise and find a way to move forward to educate kids well. Because in the end, if there's continued reductions in resources and if we're not educating kids well, the state will pay for a long time.
There's obviously a school of thought that you may share that we either fund education up front or we build more prisons later on.
Well, I do agree with that view very much in terms of priority needs to be placed on investing in education. And we do need to be good stewards of the resources people provide us, but this has to be about an investment strategy for children. Having said that, I wish I could feel a greater sense of optimism and leaving around that. This has been a very difficult time politically over the past couple of years, and it's going to take people to rise above the fray and to say, I respect you have a different view, but let's work together to serve children in this state. I hope that can happen, but this is, I mean, I don't think there's any other way I can say it other than this has been a very tough time, and communities are affected by that lack of bipartisanship.
Is there a place where you think that this school district could be a better steward of resources?
I mean, I think we have worked very hard to be good stewards of resources, and I think the commitment that we've had is where there's an area where we can become more economical and still do the same things for kids, let's do that. So I think there hasn't been any shying away from that, and I don't see that happening going forward.
What do you think is the greatest challenge going forward for the school district as you're leaving it?
I think the greatest challenge is to ensure that all kids and their learning continue to advance. And at the same time, so that means that our kids that are achieving real well, we need to nurture their development. I've tried to be supportive of that need. At the same time, we need to eliminate these achievement gaps. Those are tough things to balance, but the fact of the matter is we're serving all kinds of children in the school district. And I'm talking about all kinds of learners. We're talking kids that are beyond our standards and kids that aren't meeting standards. And so there's a big challenge around how that is all balanced.
Are you optimistic?
I am optimistic. I mean, I'm an optimistic person by kind of who I am, and I'm optimistic that in going forward that this district, with its commitment to do right for children, will continue to do that.